of advice for anybody deciding to film a dramatic YouTube intro in a field, be sure to check for ticks. You may not think it's an issue, but trust me, it is. Anyway, Dark Souls, one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time, often cited as a masterpiece, one of the most influential games of the 2010s. I don't like it that much. I don't think it's a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have my issues with it, and those issues I don't see talked about as much on YouTube these days. So I'm hoping to use this video as a way to share my voice and to mirror other people who may feel the same way. Will I succeed? Who knows? I might not, but you'll have to watch the video to find out. Anyway, let's get started. Wait, Zach? Why is he calling me right now? Can he not see I'm filming a video? Yo, what the fuck do you want?
Bro, urgent announcement. Big time news. Danny DeVito,
Uh-huh.
you know, the Mario movie,
Yes.
he got OnlyFans.
Okay. Is that it? Is there not like another thing you were gonna add on to that?
Fuck you mean, is that it? Bro, he is so thick, it's only $20 a month.
Sure, but like I don't really see how that's important to me, right? I guess is my question.
Got you. All right. Well, I can send you some of the Danny DeVito videos.
No, we're not doing this. Better idea. How about I instead unnecessarily include you in a video I could have done by myself?
Sure.
So, okay.
Why not?
Fuck it. Let's do an interview then. Hell yeah. If I could describe Dark Souls in one word, that word would be clunky. Everything from its dated UI to its slow movement to the fact that when you lock onto an enemy, you can only dodge in 4 directions. I know these are issues because the later games addressed and fixed them, but when we're talking about technical issues, I also mean performance too. I feel like this is an area where most Dark Souls fans can actually agree with me. A lot of the old console versions just aren't that good. Back when I first played Dark Souls, it was on the PS3, and I remember being subject to very low frame rates, glitches, and bugs galore. From what I heard though, the old PC version is even worse. It potentially won't run unless you have a good enough computer, and even if it does, it's so poorly optimized, you're better off just trying to use a mod to fix things. I remember watching the original Zack Snyder playthrough of it. And it didn't last terribly long, obviously. But one of my favorite moments that really emphasized the kind of dated nature is your Black Knight encounter. Do you remember how that went down? Where you were fighting him and you died, and you're fighting him and you died, and you're like, oh, I got an idea. So you lead him out into, I think, a tower or a building. Yeah. And then he just kind of keeps stabbing through the wall until you're finally able to defeat him. And I'm like, I don't think this was even remotely intentional at all. I feel like you just kind of abused the systems
100%
in play to get something. And for some people, that can be really fun. But I've seen far too much gameplay footage of just the game being flat out glitchy at points.
Yeah. The original version of Dark Souls was also really tough on any computer. I think there were certain areas of that game where I was walking in like 15 frames per second areas. And I'm like, that is awful. They got the remastered version that came out a few years ago. It's a lot better about that, which is nice. But even that playthrough that you're talking about was on the remastered version. There are still that clunkiness of it to where like you can hit somebody through a wall, kind of. That makes no sense.
And yeah, I guess we should talk about the remastered version. It's kind of hard to discuss Dark Souls Remastered given how contested it is. On the one hand, the frame rate's now locked at 60 FPS, which is nice, but on the other hand, the textures are barely improved. Those gameplay issues I talked about earlier, they're not fixed either, and there's no new content. So you essentially paid $60 just for a stable PC port, and that's something that should have already existed beforehand, at least as a free option to upgrade if you already bought it the first time. I don't know, man. Charging for it again just doesn't seem right. And looking on YouTube, the reactions even from Dark Souls fans were mixed, to say the least. So, all of this has me wondering, why aren't the other Dark Souls games recommended more, considering they don't have as many technical issues? The point I've often wondered is, why is almost all the attention surrounding the first title when Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro have all kind of taken that formula and refined it over the years? People don't like Dark Souls 2, so I didn't mention it in the conversation. But at least those other three are all very well-regarded games and came out much later, all of which for the PS4. It just makes me wonder why all the attention on the first one still.
I think Dark Souls is one of those like once in a generation games where the people that play it and love it really love it and they stick to it. Similar to Ocarina of Time, right? We have so many better Zelda games that have came out since Ocarina of Time.
You're gonna get in hot water for saying that. You can't
but
be
like it's the same thing. Like Twilight Princess is a more refined Ocarina of Time. It's just better in those ways. Skyward Sword does things better than Ocarina. Breath of the Wild obviously does a lot of things better than Ocarina, and yet due to nostalgia, due to the time those people played those games, I think it's the same thing with Dark Souls 1. It developed this interest of playing some more challenging games. And while Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne and even Sekiro, I'm sure they kind of hit the same itch, I think it's kind of like a drug, and I think people are trying to get that first high again, and they're not able to reach it like they were with Dark Souls 1.
Maybe there's a bit of nostalgia here, or maybe Dark Souls has something that the other sequels lack. Either way, this is the most dated game in the series. It came out in 2011, and it shows. It feels clunky to play, to watch, and to experience, regardless of what platform you play it on. Rest assured that the technical issues are part of the Dark Souls 1 experience, and it hasn't held up well. Yeah, I'm sure you saw this one coming. The Dark Souls fanbase isn't great. If you haven't played the game before, I'm sure you can name at least one interaction of someone telling you, "Hey, have you played Dark Souls yet? It's the hardest game ever made. There's a ton of story and lore." It's this mountain of non-stop promises and expectations. And yet, for the casual player who maybe isn't interested, this appreciation can feel like a barrage. You just get tired of the game being shoved down your throat so often. Why would you ever pick it up? It's a similar experience I had with Undertale. The game looked good, but I didn't play it when it came out, and part of the reason why was just how bad the fanbase was. There were good parts, like the fan art and remixes, but more often it felt dominated by bullying, bad behavior, and weird sexual stuff. It just turned me off from the game. After all, if I were to play it, would I then have to interact with these people? I know it sounds petty, but first impressions mean everything, especially in an era of social media and content creation. Your opinion of a game could be directly tied to how you feel about the fanbase. And honestly, that's a fair reaction to have, whether it's with Undertale, and yes, even Dark Souls. I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit and sort of talk about the fan base, because you did bring that up earlier. But it feels like that seems to be where most of the discussion is nowadays. Like, some people talk about Dark Souls, and then a lot of people talk about the people that talk about Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Because it's almost such a... I don't even want to say minority. It's almost like a loud majority of folks that get so invested in this game to the point where people feel like they need to defend it. I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on the fan base in general?
I think it's like any fan base. Dark Souls specifically, I agree, there is this loud majority, and there's a lot of gatekeeping, which is really unfortunate. You see, part of that has to do with the fan base. Part of it has to do with media, just in general, especially with game journalists calling every new game that's just a little bit tough the Dark Souls of that genre. You're like, come on, that's a little ridiculous. Crash Bandicoot is not like Dark Souls. I'm sorry, move on. But then also on the other side of things, calling Dark Souls the hardest game ever is not true. It's ridiculous. The game harkens back to a time where you had to try a little bit in the video game you were playing, which not everybody fucks with. Not everybody, some people just want to have a fun, cozy time. And that's where you get your Stardew Valleys. That's where you get your Animal Crossings and your Minecrafts. And I get it. I do not play every single Souls-like that's out there just because somebody says it's quote difficult or is a challenge. Some of it's just bad game design. But to go back to the fan base, I think there is an issue with most fan bases, Dark Souls included, which is why I don't personally spend too much time in any kind of fan base. People will gatekeep it. They'll say that if you hadn't beaten the game, you don't have a say-so in your opinions. I think that's wrong. Everybody, if you've played the game for an hour, I'd say your opinion is entitled to a certain extent. So it just is what it is, I guess.
I find this relationship between Dark Souls fans and the media to be really fascinating. On the one hand, Zach makes a really good point. Comparing Crash Bandicoot to Dark Souls is quintessential bad journalism. It's taking a little bit of truth and stretching it to an unreasonable degree. But that got me thinking, why does this behavior exist in the first place? We have an effect, but no cause. How come we don't see this trend with like Monkey Ball, for example? Why is all the focus on Dark Souls? And the reason why, at least my opinion, is that the fan base actually started this trend. Think about it. Dark Souls fans are so ravenous for content that it makes pure marketing sense to target that vocal majority. They hype up Dark Souls so much that why wouldn't an outlet take advantage with those guaranteed clicks? So yes, we should absolutely blame bad journalism for taking advantage of the situation, but it's this fan base that continues to add fuel to the fire. They created this monster, not the casual public. Both sides, I think, are equally at fault, and neither one wants to take responsibility for the situation. So now, we're just left with all these bad game design hot takes. I just wanted to ask, in general, we've talked a lot about technical issues and things that should on paper work, but they don't in game. Are there any just like flat out design decisions you're just not a fan of? Like they work as intended, but you're just like, yeah, that's probably a bad idea.
I think the note system, the fact that other players can drop notes for you to read and it'll tell you like, hey, there's a chest above. Like there's a chest coming up in your vicinity. Go ahead and go this way to get to it. You're like, that's cool. This is a community driven game. They're telling me where to go. It also means that you can put epic loot ahead and it's just an abyss and you're just going to trust it because exactly. There's no epic loot. You're just dying. And so that kind of comes back to the fan base again, where it's like I think it's split in half. I think half of the Dark Souls fan base wants people to enjoy the game as much as them. So they create these guides and these podcasts and this content, and they leave helpful notes in the game. And the other half is just like, no, I want you to suffer just as much as I did on my first playthrough when I played the game at launch and there was nobody that knew what they were doing. And then they put epic loot ahead and there ain't nothing but death.
But let's say you look past those negative interactions. Maybe you decide to play the game anyway. Well, what happens when you start to have questions? You can go to a Dark Souls fan and ask for help, but they'll reply with two magical words. Get good. Oh, having trouble with this fight? Get good. Don't understand what this item does? Get good. Have any issues with the game whatsoever? Get good. Yep, no actual help, just those two words repeated ad nauseum. Not only does this mentality make being a newcomer so hard, but it's also an excuse to deflect any criticism brought at the game. It's the sort of feverish defense that makes discussing Dark Souls so terrible, whether it's with friends or even on YouTube videos. So, whether we're talking about people telling you to get good or simply bad games journalism, this fanbase has done very little good in my opinion. I know, technically it has nothing to do with the game, but this fanbase is yet another reason why I don't like Dark Souls. If I'm being honest, the technical issues in Fanbase only make up a small percentage of why I don't like this game. My biggest issue actually has to do with the lack of conveyance, or put more simply, Dark Souls never ever ever explains its rules to you. And that's kind of an issue because this game, for lack of a better term, is an action RPG with weapons, classes, items, stats, places to explore, and enemies to fight. It's a lot of information to digest, and Dark Souls does a horrible job at teaching any of it to you. It just sort of expects that you wander around and figure it out for yourself. And you know what? That's fine. I don't like heavy-handed tutorials in games. But where Dark Souls gets on my bad side is not only does it not explain its rules, but what information is there is just so cryptic. This game has a nasty habit of misdirecting the player. It'll either say very little to give you the wrong idea about a weapon or an item, or it'll just straight up lie to you, like the notes left by online players. Here's a question then. Would you say Dark Souls is a game that requires a walkthrough?
I think you need some kind of resource to get into it to fully enjoy it. Because on the surface, Dark Souls is a action adventure game. It's a little tough to get through. You have some bosses that you're going to continuously fight until you beat them. You're going to have some areas that you're going to have to like figure your way through it. But behind all of that, there's also like this deep, rich lore of the world, right? But the game doesn't tell you any of this out front. You're not getting a main story thrown at you. You're not given directions as to like, here's the next quest you need to do. Here's the next area you need to go to. It's very much about like exploring the world, which I appreciate. But if you're trying to beat the game, I think there are certain areas where you're absolutely going to need some kind of walkthrough or guide or somebody to tell you, yeah, this is the right location you need to go to next.
In my opinion, a walkthrough is required. Without it, the game just becomes too tough. I get Dark Souls is a hard game, but I think there's a difference between difficulty and challenge. Challenge, for instance, feels fair. It doesn't make you angry or frustrated. Challenge comes from having all the appropriate tools in order to succeed. That way, when you solve a tough problem, it feels satisfying. Unfortunately, Dark Souls never feels satisfying to me. I don't understand the rules, I'm not given the tools to succeed, and then I'm expected to make informed decisions with huge consequences. It's not fair anymore, because Dark Souls is less challenging and more just difficult, and that's why conveyance is so important. For a game as complex as Dark Souls, and there's a lot of stuff going on, characters, stats, classes, items, misdirection, a whole combat system you have to learn. The fact that I feel like when I start, I feel like I'm really, really slow for some reason. Like I'm over encumbered.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of these systems in play, and I feel like Dark Souls does a very poor job of explaining hardly any of it to you. That most of the difficulty for me comes in just simply not knowing the rules.
No, that makes sense. And I agree with you. I think there's a total lack of conveyance in anything Dark Souls related. They do not tell you what the titular Souls items do unless you wait for the right loading screen. And even then, it literally makes no sense unless you look it up to figure out what they do. And that is my biggest issue with the game. And I'd say the franchise, but again, I haven't played too much of the other games. Even Bloodborne though. Like there's a whole like saw mechanic where you can take your fucking weapon and turn it into like a two-handed weapon or something, and there's like a werewolf mechanic that I have no idea what the fuck it does, and I'm gonna have to look it up eventually when I go to play the game again. And I think that is the biggest issue with Dark Souls in general, is they kind of wanted it to be that community focused game where people had to talk about it, but then like you said, it's like playing an MMO without understanding what the game's about, right?
Playing Zelda 1 without a map. Like you can, but like how long are you willing to wander around not getting any progress before you just have to say, screw it. Give me help. I need help. You want to know what the crazy part about all this is? Dark Souls doesn't even need to be cryptic, because when you finally figure out all this information, it's still a hard game. Yeah, there's still a challenge, only now it feels fair because I understand what's going on. It's bizarre to me that Dark Souls could have had it both ways. It still could have been this super tough game while also having proper conveyance. There would be no need to misdirect players. Everybody would win. Both the hardcores and newcomers can enjoy the game for what it is. But they chose to omit that conveyance, and it suffers as a whole. So that's why when I play Dark Souls now, I have a video walkthrough up, or a wiki telling me what all the items do. But at that point, it just doesn't feel fun anymore. It feels like a school project I need to turn in. Why would I bother spending all this time on just one game when I could play 1,000 other great games that are not only more convenient, but better explains its rules to the player, sometimes in the first hour even. It's this lack of conveyance that really hurts Dark Souls and keeps me from not enjoying it as much as I would like to. And hopefully, now you understand why. So, what do we make of all this then? What's my final takeaway on Dark Souls? Well, this may not be a surprise to anyone, but I don't like the game that much. Call it a personal preference or a long-standing grudge, I don't care. I just don't think Dark Souls is for me. And that's totally fine. Hopefully though, you were able to understand why I felt that way. Believe it or not, I don't like being negative. I didn't want to bash on Dark Souls for 20 minutes. I just felt it was important to showcase other people's voices who may have felt a similar way. And speaking of those different perspectives, I want to give a huge shout out to Zach for being in this video. Without his interview, I never would have saw all of the positive aspects of Dark Souls and why people continue to love this game so much. Even if he didn't always agree with me in the interview, I felt it made the video better. So go ahead, check him out, link in the description below. He runs an awesome channel that I think deserves more love. But that'll be it for this video. If you like it, be sure to leave a like. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe. But above all else, you know what? I just hope you have a good day. Yeah, Dark Souls fans, you earned it. Go grab some scented candles, have like a bubble bath or something. Maybe go out to eat. I don't know, like a Chili's. Go hit up the Chili's. Tell them Aiden sent you. Well, speaking of which, Chili's sounds good right about now. Ayo, Chili's! Where are you at?